Just yesterday, DICE officially announced the release date of the Battlefield 5 version of the classic Battlefield map, Wake Island. This is the map that launched the series, basically, and it's great to see it returning to its World War II roots. So now that we have a third map on the way, and players are continuing to enjoy the Pacific content, everyone must be pretty excited, right? Well, no, actually the community is quite outraged. That's because of patch 5.2, which launched just ahead of Wake Island's launch, which is next week. This patch did something that DICE had promised not to do ever again. It has completely rebalanced all of the infantry weapons in the entire game. This was done last December with no warning in order to help with player retention. DICE claimed that players were dying too quickly and just not having a good time. Their blunt method of trying to reduce this frustration for new players by making all weapons do less damage was hated by the community. One of the things that Battlefield 5 has always had going for it, even through its rougher time periods of development, is its gunplay, which most players, I would say the large majority of the fanbase, saw as a huge improvement from Battlefield 1. More recoil-based, less random deviation, more skill-based, and longer engagement ranges. Assault rifles can actually hold their own against snipers, if you tap fire or burst fire and you're careful. When DICE took that away last year, the community was outraged, and it took less than 2 weeks for DICE to roll those changes back. Here in patch 5.2 in 2019, DICE is attempting to solve that same issue. Player frustration is high and new players aren't sticking around. And I will give them credit, they're attempting a more refined method of doing so. Instead of a global modifier to reduce weapon damage, they have gone through and attempted to individually balance all of the weapons again with the same end result, that players can take more bullets before dying and have a longer time to respond to ambushes. But they're just not doing it with that blunt force modifier across all the weapons. They've attempted to go in and modify them one by one. And to do that without making all of the weapons feel terrible, they're trying to divide the weapon classes into specific engagement ranges. Bolt actions are for long range. They don't want players tap firing like they were in previous versions and getting even SMG kills at longer ranges. And they want to reduce the frustration with medium machine guns ambushing players in the open. Now, as soon as they announced this, I saw visions of 2018 all over again. I definitely hated that patch last year, along with the rest of the community. Having now played several hours with these new changes, I again will give DICE credit. This version of this time to kill change is not nearly as extreme as what they attempted last year. But at the end of the day, I'm going to have to label this a completely unnecessary and unwanted change for the large majority of their player base. Some weapons feel pretty similar. Some have gotten slight nerfs but are still definitely operable. Other weapons though, especially medium machine guns, feel hilariously underpowered now. Even with their rate of fire, medium machine guns are going to have a hard time taking players down, even if they've run out into the open. Even worse for me, some of my favorite assault rifles on the assault class really feel like you're shooting popcorn now. I mean, just look at this clip right here with the Winchester model of 1907. That is just laughable to me. I know that not all of those shots were hitting as the enemy was trying to sprint away, but still, that would have been a kill in the previous 5.1 version. Notice how much the pistol damage is too. They really haven't rebalanced pistols or the bolt action rifles to go along with these changes for most of the other weapons. So right now, especially at certain close ranges, pistols feel like more powerful weapons than some of the submachine guns or the assault rifles. The Winchester in particular was already at a really good place. It was fast firing in version 5.1 and it was a absolute massacre machine at close ranges. But now it feels like it takes the entire 21 round magazine to get a kill even at 10 or 15 meters. That's just not how these weapons work. I actually produced an entire video about the Winchester 1907 in my Backyard Battlefield series last year. And yes, this is just a game, but the Winchester 1907 fires an intermediate rifle caliber cartridge. That's like an AR or an AK. That's a full-powered rifle cartridge. If this full auto version in Battlefield 5 is firing this fast, these bullets should not feel like you're firing some kind of anemic 380 submachine gun at your enemy. Putting the Winchester aside though, I still think the medic, as well as the support class, have gotten the worst end of the stick here. Several of the medic guns, including the Type 99 for the Japanese side, really do feel next to useless at anything less than straight up hip-fire range. These weapons are clearly meant for turning the corner and putting the weapon right against your enemy. At any kind of medium distances, I'm talking 25, 30, maybe 40 meters, you're going to have to hope that your enemy is completely clueless or already injured if you want to get a kill. Then you have the recon class with their bolt-action rifles. I mentioned to you guys that they really haven't gotten any changes in this patch whatsoever, so now the ability to get instant kill headshots is going to be a huge reason to pick the recon class. Frequently, I would win a gunfight despite being ambushed just because I could pause and get that headshot against an enemy who was peppering me with now mostly ineffective submachine gun or assault rifle rounds. Look at this clip right here. This poor medium machine gunner had an ambush set up to protect the objective. I took fire, couldn't figure out where he was, hid, and was then able to just peek him and shoot him in the face. The whole time he's peppering me with this medium machine gun. He's got his bipod down, and that's supposed to be an engagement setup where he is guaranteed to win that fight. I feel like the complaints about snipers are going to be getting much, much worse in this 5.2 patch. I just don't see the community enjoying this gameplay. Now it could be that we're going to adjust to these changes over the next couple of weeks, and eventually we're going to have a nice carved out zone for each one of these classes' weapons, but at the moment, having played for the last year with the old weapon values, none of this feels like a real improvement. It doesn't feel like the sky is falling. Again, I will say that this is a much more reasonable set of changes than what DICE tried last year, but none of this feels necessary, and I do not think that it's going to have the intended result of retaining players longer. Players who can't fly planes and can't drive tanks are still going to get insta-killed by both of those kind of vehicles. Players who are new to the maps are still going to get shot from corners and angles that they weren't expecting, even with all the time in the world to react with these new weapon damage models. And the old school players are going to adapt to these new changes if they even stick around, and they're going to get used to when they can let off of the trigger and when they have to reload, and they're still going to be good at the game. I just do not think that this is going to stop new player churn, as DICE called it, I believe. There are so many more important issues with the game that should be a focus for DICE, team balance being the absolute first one. I still don't get why DICE decided that not having team switch would help improve team balance. Now you can't swap teams to help the enemy team when they all quit at the start of a match and you're playing 24 players versus 8. Matchmaking also seems to be terrible, with no real compensation for players' rank or ability. The first match that I tried here in patch 5.2 to try out these new weapon stats was on a frontline server, a mode that I was happy to see return in this patch. But it put me on a team that was stacked with experienced players against a bunch of new guys for the most part, and once the couple of long-term players on their team started to quit out, the team balance just got worse. That's going to get people to uninstall the game a lot faster than slightly dying faster while running across open spaces. Players can learn how the weapon damage works and play more carefully. All of us had to do it when we swapped from Battlefield 1 to Battlefield 5 after all. When you also add in the fact that we do have an actual pretty serious issue with hackers here on PC that is seeming to grow more and more with each passing week, and also that new players are going to be faced with the daunting task of unlocking a wild amount of weapons, unlocks, specializations, vehicle tech trees and the like from the last year, these are all the problems that are going to get players to quit. Not the gunplay that Battlefield 5 has been riding its reputation on for the last year. So, at the end of the day, I'm going to reiterate, the sky is not falling. This probably isn't the end of Battlefield 5, but this is yet another nail in the coffin of DICE's reputation with their core community. Battlefield 5, in its attempt to please everyone, is more and more often pleasing no one. and it's very difficult to figure out who exactly the developers are targeting with so many of these content drops, the crazy Christmas and Halloween skins, these noob-friendly weapon changes, and easy-to-use gadgets like the Fliegerfaust, where players who, again, are just new and can't use vehicles can single-handedly take them on their own. None of this is what the community has been asking for. And while I'm not going to write the gameplay and gunplay off just yet, I'm going to keep trying to see how I feel about all the different classes and their weapon changes. I hope that DICE focuses down on what players do want to see. Better anti-cheat, more realistic and immersive cosmetics that people actually are going to want to buy and see other players using. More maps like the excellent Pacific content maps that we've gotten so far, and more of our favorite World War II theaters of war. For now, let me know what you guys think of this patch. Do you absolutely hate it? Do you absolutely love it? Or are you kind of like me and you're just trying to understand why this was necessary? For now, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time.